That's why they write their names on a lot of this, on the bullet shells, because they want you to know where it's coming from. And we all got to remember, illegal is not a race, and there's a legal way to enter a country and an illegal way to enter.
Those conventions now run the border. We don't run the border anymore. The president has come in, he's signed some executive orders, he's given the guys down on the border patrol the powers and authorities that they always wanted.
Across the UK, four-star hotels are filled to the brim with small boat migrants, illegally arriving, billeted in style at a cost of £5.5 million a day. Meanwhile, 5,000 miles away in the bug-ridden Florida Everglades, Donald Trump has opened Alligator Alcatraz, a swamp prison where hundreds of illegal migrants can be caged in brutal conditions. The message? Don't come here illegally. America cracks down while Britain seems to roll out the red carpet. But it's working. US illegal crossings at the southern border have ground to a halt, while the UK faces a record crossing year again. To discuss all that is joining me to discuss all that is Art Del Cueto, veteran Border Patrol agent of 22 years, and Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force. Art, I'm going to come to you first. Talk us through what it's been like of late since Donald Trump has clamped down and how he's done it.
Well, obviously, the numbers have dropped tremendously, and he did it through rhetoric. That's what people need to understand. When you have a person in leadership, in a leadership role, and he says, we're not going to put up with lawlessness. We're going to follow the law. A lot of people, there's been a lot of criticism of President Trump back and forth, but what everyone needs to remember is all he's done is say, these are the laws in the books, we're going to follow them. That's what it comes down to. Under the last administration, the difference was he would say anyone that comes across and asks for asylum, they're going to get released and they're going to be able to remain in the United States until we'll get to you when we get to you, I guess is what they would say. So what did that do? It created a huge magnet for people from all over the world. And it's estimated it was individuals from 168 different countries that came to the United States under the Biden administration. They came, asked for asylum, they were released in our streets, and we don't know where the majority of those individuals are now.
You talk about using rhetoric, but it would sort of be a little bit more than that, surely. I mean, look at images of Alligator Alcatraz as a deterrent. Does that work? Is it putting people off from making the journey? New York has used migrant hotels before. It's got to be a little bit more complicated than that, hasn't it?
Well, that's the detention facility. That's what it comes down to. So instead of having people come into the U.S., ask for asylum, and then get lost and not be able to find them, he said, if you come in, we're going to detain you until you can prove your actual immigration case, and then if you're eligible, then you can remain, but if you're not, you're going to be returned. Now, when it comes to the Alligator Alcatraz, we need to remember, and people sometimes don't know this, that facility was already there. It wasn't built. They didn't bring alligators and put them around that facility. That facility was already there. It hadn't been getting used. They reopened it, and it just happens to have water around it, and there's alligators there. There's a lot of alligators in a lot of other places within the United States. It wasn't built specifically for that.
Yeah, I get that. Tony Smith, great to see you again. Long time no see. Nothing. Keir Starmer is certainly not short of a fair bit of rhetoric. All we heard for the election campaign last year was stop the boats this, stop the boats that, smash the gangs, but it doesn't seem to be working. What do you think that the government could learn from Donald Trump on, how to get those numbers down?
Well, exactly. It is about detaining people when they land in the UK and keeping them in detention and removing them from the territory. And when I was a young immigration officer back in the day, 70s and the 80s, that's exactly what we used to do, Harry. On my authority, I could detain an illegal entrant without going to court. I could serve removal directions on them. I didn't even need to get a passport. But what's happened over the last 25, 30 years or so is this growth in asylum and litigation, which now means that once a migrant gets within our territorial waters, let alone on our beaches, we are legally obliged to bring them into UK jurisdiction once they get to the border. Because of the sheer weight of numbers, we are doing exactly as the US were doing a couple of years ago. We're paroling them into the UK, mainly into hotels at public expense, and they get piled on this huge backlog of cases, many of which will never be resolved. And so, it does require tough measures. And our hats off to the US. The president has come in, he's signed some executive orders, he's given the guys down on the border patrol the powers and authorities that they always wanted to be able to arrest, detain and remove people. We don't have that in the UK Border Force, I'm afraid, Harry. In the UK Border Force, we are where you were, guys, a couple of years ago. We're still paroling large numbers of people into the UK. And of course, people in the UK are getting fed up with it because they are now landing in communities. As you know, Harry, they're being put up in hotels, some quite expensive, four-star, five hotels. Some of them are getting into the shift, not many of them, but some are causing real problems in those communities. And you are now seeing a backlash in the communities about the number of irregular migrants that are getting into those communities. So we do need a real radical change, Harry, in my view. But I'm afraid I can't see that coming under our parliamentary system and under our current government.
You look horrified.
Harry, this is the problem when you're having a situation like that. We had it in the US, and I would hate for the UK to fall in the same boat. When you start creating that beacon and say, if you come, you're going to get paroled, we're going to release you, we'll get to you when we get to you. What happens is you start getting people from all over the world, and they won't come in with their proper documents. So now the UK government is in the same spot that the US was. We don't know what their record was in that country unless we can cross-reference it. So in a sense, you can have criminals from all over the world reinventing themselves, going into this country and just making up a name and starting from scratch. That's a very, very dangerous game for law-abiding citizens in a lot of countries.
Tony, what's the morale like in Border Force? Do you still speak to your old colleagues there? I mean, it must be fairly draining to sort of basically essentially become a ferry service rather than a border force.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, I think what's changed with us is the border force is not what it was when I was there. I did life in there 40 years, man and boy. I know the Border Patrol did do that. But now you get people coming and going into the border force who haven't got that depth and necessarily breadth of experience, sometimes in senior positions. So the officers on the ground are looking for leadership. They don't want to operate taxi services. It breaks my heart, Harry, when you see stories in the media about the border force are just a bunch of taxis and they're all trying to. That's not the case. We cannot put the Home Secretary in contempt of court. We cannot cause unauthorised, we've done for a homicide, for death. Look at those dinghies, People are falling in the water all the time. People are drowning. The border force will get the blame for it. They would quite happily detain them, put them on aircraft and remove them if they were allowed to. There's a camaraderie still there. Yeah, of course I'll still talk to them. There is a camaraderie in all the enforcement agencies that's still there. But I think a sense of frustration, really, that they're not being able to do the job that the legislation should empower them to do in terms of detentions and removals.
Do you think, you talk about this, the government not having potentially the will within the current structures to change it? What do you think? Where do you see the issue heading in terms of leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, moving away from some of the refugee conventions and the like? Do you think that the time has come now to really take some of that radical action?
Yeah, because these conventions have taken over the border, Harry. Those conventions now run the border. We don't run the border anymore. The moment you mention the magic word, whether it's asylum or human rights or torture convention or any of those magic words, then a process kicks in. Whether or not you're a victim, don't matter. You then go off to a judicial process which can be interminable. Now, we did try, the last government did try this Rwanda idea, which would say that don't matter about any of those conventions, we're going to send you to Rwanda and you can go and claim all those things there. But we never got anywhere. It was blocked in the House of Lords. It was blocked in the European courts. We could not get people out on flights to Rwanda. And this government came in, the first thing they did was abolish the Rwanda plan. So we don't have anywhere to send them to. We're trying something with the French, but it's a very, very small pilot to get the odd one back here and there, Harry. It's not really going to. What you've got to do is send a message across the English Channel to all those migrants that are waiting to get in boats. There's no point you getting across here. Once you get here, we're going to arrest you, detain you and remove you from the territory. But we can only do that if we've got the powers and authorities and somewhere to send you to in the first place.
You're shaking it. Yeah, you're agreeing that the deterrent factor. What else is in America's arsenal as a deterrent? It's obviously much harder to work in America without the correct paperwork. There is obviously a large black economy, cash economy in the United States as there is in the United Kingdom. But what other deterrents do you guys have in terms of stopping people coming?
That's what you got to pretty much do. I know it sounds so simple. Look, the wheel is the wheel. You can't reinvent it. It's there already. And it is that simple. If you have people coming into your country and they have some type of immigration case, what is inhumane of detaining them and saying, I'm going to hold you here until you can prove your case? There's absolutely nothing inhumane about doing that. In fact, I would say it's the opposite. When you start just releasing people into your country, you're being inhumane to your own citizens, first and foremost. And second of all, now you're opening the door for human trafficking to reach even higher levels, because now they're taking advantage of that. And they're telling the criminal elements are going to take advantage of bringing into the country as well. So there's nothing inhumane with detaining people and making them prove their case if they want to remain in your country. And you can speak to people that are in favor or against it, but they're all going to give you the same response. Do you want someone to come to your home and knock on your door and you allow who you want in your house? Or do you want people just climbing through your windows?
Tony, do you think the age of hotels is over? The government have pledged to end them by, well, it was the end of the year, then it's the end of 2029, then it's by the next election. It's a bit of a mess exactly when they're going to phase them out. But do you think it's time to move back to a model of perhaps using former army barracks, former student accommodation, and making it a little less cushy, so to speak?
Well, so not only is our border broken, but our asylum support system is broken, Harry. That's the issue. I mean, I was there when they set this up, and that was, again, a judicial case. People were arriving on the beaches in Dover on my watch. We couldn't send them straight back again because we had nowhere to put them, so we were bailing them into the communities. And they were saying, you can't just do that, Border Force, you've got to give them some money. I said, well, we've got any money. What do you mean give them some money? Oh, yeah, it's a breach of their Article 3 of the European Convention on Human Rights, inhuman and degrading. Yeah. To admit somebody who's destitute into your country. That's where asylum support began, Harry. So we started giving them a few quid, and then courts got involved, and now it's got to the point where it's a production line.
It's amazing. Did you see this?
Sorry, go on.
No, the story last week, one of the they've set up this scheme to do with the one in, one out scheme. It's actually about 10,500 in, 3 out at the moment. But one of the reasons they were able to stop them themselves being deported to France, a safe country, was the fact they'd be destitute in France. And the fact was they'd be destitute in France because the British taxpayer gives them a preloaded credit card every week with money on it. And if they get sent to France, that will be taken away from them, and therefore they will be destitute. I mean, it's bonkers, right?
Look, Harry, we're trying to send people back to France, right? It's very near here.
It's lovely. We go there on holiday. It's nice.
They are signatories to all of these conventions. They could have applied for all of these things there. We're saying we're going to send you back there, where you can still apply for all of these things in France because they're,
Yeah.
And we're still getting done in our courts, Harry. We're still getting injunctions from our own courts saying you can't send them back to France because France is not safe. France is manifestly safe. How can France not be a safe country? But these are the arguments we're up against. That's why I say we've given away jurisdiction over our border to our courts, which is driven really largely by human rights claims and by some fairly liberal judges adjudicate. First level tribunal. You will see some of the cases. I'm sure you've reported on them, Harry, some of these cases where we try to deport people, so we can't send him there because of one reason or another, which seems entirely spurious, but it's based upon these European conventions. So we've really got to sort out our legal framework, and we've got to sort out our asylum support system. And just hats off to the US, because I love those guys down on the Border Patrol. I went out with them a few times. We worked really well with them. And I'm really glad they're getting what they wanted now, and they're getting the powers and authorities. And I think Tom Homan's doing a fantastic job. And I just wish we could do the same thing on our border. But at the moment, Harry, I don't think that's going to happen, I'm afraid.
Again, I mean, we're continually to make you look horrified throughout this discussion. There's a lot of anti-ICE, anti-immigration enforcement rhetoric kicking around the United States at the moment. We've seen some horrific scenes today, overnight, with the shooting at an ICE centre. How toxic is the issue becoming in the wider public, or is it actually a fringe sort of left-wing protests who don't like it, but actually the majority of the public quite like what they see, right?
So the problem that we're having is you have a lot of people, on the liberal side that are pushing the rhetoric of hate towards law enforcement in general, and they've been doing it for quite some time. And it happened throughout the years. It's not an overnight thing that President Trump showed up and then they figured out how to hate us more. It's been a lot of indoctrination throughout the school system for a long, long time, and they build this push. And you have politicians and you have people in the media that have a certain agenda, and they're spreading their venom and their hate. But then you got the lunatics, like the piece of human garbage that killed my friend, Charlie Kirk, and the piece of human garbage that took shots at ICE agents just yesterday. And unfortunately, lives were lost there as well. those are the ones that are easily manipulated when they're hearing the rhetoric by these individuals in leadership positions. And they're not afraid to get caught, and they want you to know who they are and what they're doing. That's why they write their names on a lot of this, on the bullet shells, because they want you to know where it's coming from.
Tony, I couldn't put it better myself. Tony, inversely, they're seeing actually almost going the other way in the United Kingdom, that flags are going up on lampposts, roundabouts are being sprayed. I know I bang on about this every night, but there is something happening out there. It's actually a sort of tacit support from the public that they've had enough of this and they want the politicians to go further.
Well, I think it's, whatever your politics, Harry, it's a sense of fair play. I think we Brits are renowned for that. We play cricket. We play by the rules. And, you know, British people are going through a tough time. And you know this, in many of our cities and towns, you know, it's tough for hard-working families. And when you see migrants coming in undocumented, but potentially unscreened into hotels next door to you, and potentially, you know, actually committing offences or harassing your kids, then the Brits will rise up. And that is what is happening. It's nothing to do with the far-right thuggery we hear about or all the right-wing Tommy Robinson stuff. It's nothing to do. The people that were on that march on last Saturday in London, massive march, were normal people that you would meet in a pub on a Sunday afternoon who've just fed up with it, Harry. They want the government to stop this. And they're fed up, having heard from successive governments for many years now they're going to stop it, and they haven't stopped it. And I think that's what's happening in the UK right now.
Right.
Harry, you got to remember, they'll make it a race issue, and we all got to remember, illegal is not a race, and there's a legal way to enter a country and an illegal way to enter. Just like there's a legal way to enter my home. You knock on that front door, and I decide who comes inside.
Exactly. Brits do not like queue jumpers, so to speak. A very knotty issue, just finally, before we go. Knotty issue that's rearing its head again as the government in the United Kingdom grapples with those record numbers, which is ID cards. Tony, I want to pick your brains on this. Is it a solution? It's obviously not a silver bullet, but will it help to counter that sort of pull factor of the ease at which you can work illegally in the United Kingdom if everyone's forced to carry, you know, a digital document? Or are we tarring everyone with the, you know, clamping down on everyone's civil liberties for something that's not going to work?
It's pretty easy to get a job in the UK illegally. We've had it with, you know, delivery drivers and all kinds of, you know, I could take you out now, Harry, in London and point to a few places where there are illegal workers. Yeah. We do go in and raid them. We can never remove them because they're always claiming asylum or something or other. But I mean, generally speaking, yes, I do think we need to do something about identity management, because in my experience, every time we find someone at the border or inland, they won't be giving you their proper name. They won't be giving you, we've got biometrics now. We've got facial recognition systems. We've got fingerprint systems. It's really hard to change your face and your finger. You can change your name and pick someone else's name, nationality, age at the drop of a hat. If we can get a proper biometric register, and again, we're talking to the US, you know, they've got biometric entry-exit system now. You know, you get your face and your finger taken when you enter the US. They know how long you've stayed. They know who you are. They know whether you've overstayed. Even going for medicals, all these things now can be checked using biometrics. So I would be talking about a biometric system which would enable you to establish very easily your entitlement to law enforcement. But I do be careful about data. What's happening at data? You're going to get a lot of opponents. So, oh, I can't, Big Brother, you know, data going to you. Who owns the data? How's it being kept? Who accesses it? But as a matter of principle, we've got to move towards biometrics to smash this identity problem, because more and more people are turning up here without documents, and we're having to just work out, well, who on earth are you? What name did you use when you came into the country? Yeah. And biometrics are the answer, in my view.
Well, they're chucking passports in the sea before they land, aren't they, for this very point? What's your view on that?
The same people that are complaining about giving their information so the government can know who they are the ones that are putting all their information out on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. Come on, guys.
So could be one to discuss further. I think they're going to end up doing it. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your insight. Absolutely fascinating chat there.